areas, even as flexible as a high flex file is, you're not going to be able to get into some of these isthmi or the cul-de-sacs. So that's why you need to introduce chemicals. So irrigation is an essential part of root canal debridement because it allows cleaning through it that instrumentation alone cannot do. Disinfectants helps remove the smear layer from the radicular wall. So after canal preparation, you still have all this bacteria left. And then after irrigation, you've got a nice clean canal. I'm going to jump into this quick video by Dr. Albers. I'm sure you've all seen it, but I'd rather him go through explaining this. So let me know if you guys can't hear this. Can you guys hear it?
No.
That is too bad. And I'm wondering if that's because I'm not using computer audio. Okay. Well, anyway, I'm going to walk you through this. So the only way, again, to create and disinfect a clean canal is through the use of disinfectant solution. And that's a combination of sodium hypochlorite and EDTA, chlorhexidine, and then several other of those products. And then a good way to evacuate that, which we'll get into in drying, is the Surgitip Endo. Okay. Well, I'm glad I tested that out. Back to the presentation. Okay. So, famous quote about endodontic treatment: it doesn't matter what you put in, it's more important about what you take out. So as far as irrigating protocols, they play a key role in debridement and disinfection. Chemo-mechanical action is needed to optimally clean a canal. The mechanical part is obviously done by instrumentation. The chemical part is done by irrigations. Quick history: the concept of gene therapy, germ therapy in the late 1800s had a direct effect on endodontics. Irrigation and endo grew between 1859 when Taft, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward, Dayton Miller in 1890s, Lou Grossman in 1840s did some stuff. In 19-something, there was citric acid, then some type of hypochlorite, etc. Cleaning agents were introduced. 1957, they used 15% edit. Look, the history of this is not really going to help you guys. So let's get into procedure. So the purpose of irrigating in endodontics: lubricate, dissolve, wash, destroy, remove the smear layer. Several chemicals are required to obtain these results. What we use: distilled water, sodium hypochlorite, EDTA, citric acid, chlorhexidine, MTAD or BioPure, Q-Mix 2-in-1. So these are the most commonly used products. So sodium hypochlorite. This is the most commonly used disinfectant solution or irrigating solution in root canal therapy because it dissolves necrotic pulp tissue. It slowly dissolves vital tissue, dissolves biofilm. It kills the biofilm bacteria, inactivates endotoxins. But again, I think we're all aware of what the caustic issues with using bleach, and it's that periapical tissue that can be affected, or a bleach accident. There's also some studies that show that it may weaken dentin and impact the integrity of collagen fibers, but all that is based on the timing of the product in the canal. So the less time that you have a high concentration of sodium hypochlorite in the canal, the more effective it'll be at that higher concentration level, and the more you'll kill in that short amount of time, the less damage that you'll do. So again, everybody is aware of what a bleach accident is, and that's when sodium hypochlorite is expressed beyond the apex into that periapical space. And, I think this lady should probably start getting some kind of royalty for all the times we show her face on these presentations. But it's, it's a tremendous amount of damage. It nullifies the anesthetic, so the patient will jump out of the chair from pain. And, you suction, use copious amounts of water, and then prescribe an antibiotic and an anti-inflammatory, send them to the ER, and then the swelling and bruising can last for weeks. We'll get into some ways to reduce that likelihood or avoid that. Other products that are most commonly used in root canal therapy, EDTA and citric acid. And, EDTA has just become a standard product for root canal therapy because it dissolves the inorganic tissue. It has no effect on organic tissue. It's a weak antimicrobial or antibacterial. It neutralizes the effect of sodium hypochlorite by reducing the available chlorine that's in that chemical. And then it acts as like kind of a cleaning agent that removes the smear layer. And that's the most important part. Removing that smear layer is what's going to open up the dentin tubules so that you can remove all the biofilm that's in the canal. On occasion, you'll have a highly infected tooth that you require chlorhexidine for. And this is usually a 2-appointment visit, and the patient will come in, they'll go ahead and use chlorhexidine because it does not dissolve tissue, it does not dissolve biofilm, but it is a broad spectrum antimicrobial. It's got a prolonged effect that can last up to 60 days after use. It remains in the dentin and improves long-term dentin bonding to resins. So if you have an office that's using Endo res, you'll have better bonding after using chlorhexidine. But again, I feel like this is discussed, and we'll bring this up a little bit later on as well, is that if you use sodium hypochlorite and then chlorhexidine without completely drying or using EDTA to neutralize sodium hypochlorite, you're going to get a brownish precipitate that is carcinogenic. So don't do that. As far as the recommendation for irrigation, sodium hypochlorite is going to be the first thing that you use to and introduce into the canal as you instrument. It's going to act as a lubricant as well as an antibacterial, and just dissolve any of that tissue, any of those microbes as you file in and out of the canal, both with rotary and hand files. So again, you'll irrigate with NaCl, with sodium hypochlorite as well for dissolving the pulp and its antimicrobial effects. And then after you do that, you'll have to remove the smear layer. So once you've instrumented with your files and you've irrigated that canal appropriately to dissolve all that tissue, then it's time to remove the smear layer. That's when you'll introduce EDTA and then do a final cleaning disinfectant with bleach. Meredith, I'm going to stop right there and just open the floor to you to see if you have any tips, advice, or steps, protocol for irrigating.
Steps or advice? No, I mean, we just need to make sure that we're doing it in between changing each rotary file size for at least a minute and introducing at least a milliliter of solution in the canal, keeping it flooded when we're taking the next rotary instrument down the canal. This slide itself, I have on my iPad. Whenever I show it during my presentation, it's often requested that I email it. Kind of just a step-by-step that a lot of doctors appreciate. I would keep that on your iPad. I mean, you've done a great job so far. I don't have anything to add.
Thanks. Yeah, you know what? I actually, now that you say it, thanks for your advice, Meredith. And I feel like you're right. Having that on your iPad is a big deal, and I think these two slides should be combined. Sodium hypochlorite for 15 to 30 seconds, 2 millimeter increments 5 times for a total of 10 milliliters, and EDTA 30 to 60 seconds, 2 millimeter increments 3 times for a total of 6 mLs, and then again for the final rinsing, 2 mLs 3 times for a total of 6 mLs. Do you have this on your iPad as well, Meredith?
I do.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I'll work on combining those two. But you know, it's really it's a good thing that we're going over this, and I'm going to get into some of the ways that we can talk to dentists about irrigation. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But you guys have all seen this slide before. This is showing a cross section of the root covered by the smear layer. So again, after instrumentation, you know, you've got all this inorganic, organic material that has built up through that rotary file in the canal, and it's created this sort of biofilm over the dentin tubules. So you can see the dentin tubules here. And then you've got this area that's kind of completely covered them. So sodium hypochlorite alone is not going to remove this thick film, this dentin mud. So that's when you need to introduce EDTA, and that's what's going to open up those tubules and allow for a more successful root canal therapy. If you leave this, you're going to look at potential reinfection of that canal after you've already obturated, and then it's, you know, you're sending that off to the endodontist for a retreatment. So EDTA is the standard of care. It's required for every office that's doing endo. So a couple techniques to improve the. Yeah, go ahead.
I get, just because we're finishing this, it looks like I was going to ask.
No,
because I
we're not even close.
Before. When's a good time to stop using sodium hypochlorite? How much irrigation should we do?
Back to the protocol, right? So you use sodium hypochlorite as a lubricant and as a disinfectant solution throughout the entire instrumentation of each canal, right? Keep the canal flooded. Yeah. You know, yep. So then, so the final steps after you, you know, reestablish patency, you've got your working length, you've got your final file that you've used to instrument the canal. Then you're going to do 2 millimeter increments 5 times of sodium hypochlorite, and then you're going to switch over to EDTA and then do a final sodium hypochlorite solution.
Yeah, and they show like 3 times on the last step 3 in that.
Correct.
Dr. Gray had introduced something to me that I'd never even heard of before, but it makes a lot of sense. He said, well, I certainly would continue to irrigate if I kept getting bubbles. Meaning that the sodium hypochlorite creates bubbles. And it's eating stuff. So it's effervescent. And if it's just sitting there and it's not doing anything, well, then you're probably killed all the bugs.
Yeah.
I kind of thought that was good advice. So I'd never heard that before.
That's a great point. And since you said that, I'm going to jump into this video, which I'm sure most of you have seen, but this is off Vista Dental's website. And this is just showing standard sodium hypochlorite of a concentration of about 3%, which is going to be what most dental offices use when they use Clorox. They'll dilute it to the point where it's that 3%. And then we've got our version of that product, which is extra. It's sodium hypochlorite. It's Canal Pro Extra. And you can see this tissue is dissolved 10 times faster by using a higher concentration of sodium hypochlorite. So, Jeff, what you were talking about, that effervescence, those bubbles, you're exactly right. All that tissue will be dissolved, and when it does, you'll stop the bubbles. So that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up.
That was a new one for me. So
yeah, excellent. So as far as techniques to improve effectiveness, you've got passive irrigation, which would just be introducing solution into a canal and then sucking it out or removing that irrigation material with paper points. And there's not a lot of good that comes from that. So just from everything that I've heard, everything that I've read, active irrigation is really the only way to remove dissolved tissue. And you can do that by agitating the syringe tip. So, I mean, you always got to be moving in the canal when you introduce that tip. Another thing that's really good for dissolving tissue is ultrasonic activation. And, you know, I feel like there's a lot of different products out there. You know, part of this presentation is about, you know, what is the best way for every customer of ours to do the best root canals possible. And so a lot of times you gain credibility by discussing, you know, all the different things that are going to help them achieve the best possible solution. And a lot of times that's talking about, you know, competitive products, you know, products that we just don't offer. So again, ultrasonic activation is something that I would always recommend. Heating your sodium hypochlorite to 130 degrees. There are some solution heaters available on the market that really increases the efficacy of sodium hypochlorite. Using thin needles, 27 gauge, 30 gauge, that's a great way to get the canal tip or the irrigating tip where it needs to be, 2 to 3 millimeters from the working length. Side vented needles, again, are one of those things that, you know, Meredith, I hate to throw this back at you again, but I'm just trying to see what purpose non-side vented needles have in root canal therapy irrigation.
Safety. It just comes down to safety. So if we have the side vented, it's just a little square that's on the side rather than anything at the end, you're less likely to have a sodium hypochlorite accident because it's not pushing out the end, it's pushing out the side, and the flow is easier.
So I didn't ask that question the right way. I apologize. Why do we sell tips that are not side vented? We've got two different types of tips available where the irrigation fluid
Why do we sell them?
Yeah.
Why are you putting me on the spot?
Since I'm presenting, maybe I should I should have asked that question before I presented.
I mean, someone who maybe is more comfortable with them. We're not going. We're going halfway down the canal. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do they exist?
You know,
they're used to them. I mean, we never talk about them. I mean,
we never talk about them. I'll get an answer.
We don't talk about them because, okay.
Yeah. And I think, you know, there's a couple. Obviously, sodium hypochlorite is going to have the most detrimental effect as far as irrigating solutions go. So I think that if you use EDTA or chlorhexidine, maybe that's a way to guarantee a better overall cleaning of that canal by using those tips. But sorry guys, I'll get an answer on my own question, my presentation, which I should have had answered. But anyway, moving on. Keep the tip 2 to 3 millimeters from the working length. So set your plunger 2 to 3 millimeters from that apical constriction. Never obstruct the canal. So don't force solution into the canal. Don't make sure that tip is, the tip of the irrigating solution is engaged within the canal. So let's say, you've instrumented to, if it's a narrow canal, and you can't get within 2 to 3 millimeters of the apex, then you don't try. Don't force the solution in, and then always keep the needle in motion as you are introducing that into the canal.
Pete, can I add one thing?
Sure.
If you go back to that slide, the active irrigation. So you just talked about how important it is. Agitation with the syringe tip, always moving that, like you mentioned, ultrasonic activation. So also, like you said, we have to work with what we have, and we don't have a product that we can use the ultrasonic motion. But remember in Dr. Gray's presentation, he talked about using a mastricone or a gutta percha and flooding the canal and pumping that solution. That's another thing that we can also discuss with a doctor. I had never really thought about that before, but we just bring more value to explaining the entire process. Okay.
Yeah. No, well, and Dr. Albors actually does it with his needle. I've seen him when he's doing his presentations. He does it with a syringe tip too. Not all the way in, obviously, but maybe 2/3, 1/3 of the way in, and he'll shake around his syringe tip while he's irrigating as well.
So, Kelt, I'm glad you brought that up. And from the research that I did, what Dr. Gray was, I did found some alternate information about using gutta percha or paper point to pump or activate. A couple of clinical papers discussed how there hasn't been a whole lot of evidence to show that pumping of gutta percha or paper points to sort of agitate solution has a real high effectiveness. But I don't know. I mean, I guess it's the same thing that Albers is doing by agitating with the needle. But I think he's introducing fresh solution into the canal the whole time. Sorry, I'll quit interrupting you, Kelt. What?
No. And what you were getting at earlier is, currently we don't have anything to actively irrigate, as you mentioned earlier, to be a, more than just a salesperson, to be an actual consultant or to build credibility. When this comes up, if they ask me if I have anything or during the discussion, even though we don't sell it, Vista actually makes probably the best little endo activator on the market. And it's really one of our competitors because we actually buy some of the stuff from them. So, I always bring that up, and it kind of helps the rep out that you're working with too, because they might get an additional sale out of something that they had not even thought of, because most of them don't even know it's out there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you, Kelt. I know that we've been pushing to get that product into our portfolio, but
it's the Endo Ultra Cordless Ultrasonic Activator. It's about $800. So
yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir. All right. Any other questions about techniques? Okay. Again, when the tooth becomes infected, a second appointment is often required, and that's when you would introduce chlorhexidine, which is a broad spectrum antimicrobial with sustainability. Like I said, up to 60 days it'll remain in the dentin. And again, with irrigation technique on that, sodium hypochlorite, EDTA to neutralize the sodium hypochlorite, and then broad spectrum antimicrobial with chlorhexidine. flush with distilled water between each step. Again, carcinogenic effect if you introduce sodium hypochlorite and then chlorhexidine, and you'll get this orange brownish sort of precipitant that you just don't want to happen. Okay, let's jump into some of the products that we've got to help with irrigation. And Canal Pro Extra is going to be 2 times wetter, so it's a powerful wetting agent. It's got some surface modifiers, some surfactants that are going to help to reach those hard to reach areas, lateral canals, isthmusi, and it's 2 times more digestive than regular sodium hypochlorite. So it's going to reduce the amount of time that's required to dissolve all that tissue. And that's what you want. You know, I mean, everybody's trying to get their root canals completed within an hour and just, you know, turn and burn patients. But I mean, it's something that this can cut your time in half as far as the amount of time required for that sodium hypochlorite to stay in the canal. I mean, that's a really big deal. I mean, I think over the last few weeks, we've talked about sort of remaining compliant and how this product will make it easier for an irrigating solution for you to be compliant with what's required of a root canal therapy and the proper disinfection for that. So if you can reduce the time that it takes to, you know, clean an operatory by having a 1-minute kill on Optum, then the same principle applies to any type of irrigating solution. The less time that it's in the canal, the easier it is to create a good therapy and a good clean canal for your obturation material and your sealer. And then the less damage that it's going to cause to those collagen fibers and to any of the dentin. It's not going to erode dentin the less amount of time that it's in there. So I know this product is expensive, but again, it all comes down to just dividing out the cost per unit, per canal, per tooth, and then making the solution as far as the time. You know, we'll get into that in a second. And then we also offer 6% formula and a 3% formula of sodium hypochlorite. Again, this is going to be better than going to Costco, buying a big bottle of Clorox, and then diluting that and allowing light to hit it and lose its efficacy throughout the week. So, you know, again, as far as being compliant goes, this is something that is more offices are aware of that as we come out of this whole COVID situation. These are going to be, you know, more important key topics to bring up to each account that you go into. We've got a 17% EDTA solution with a pH of 8.5. And again, this is going to remove that dentin mud, that smear layer, opens up the tubules. Again, disinfectant solutions to work better adhesion for sealers and obturation materials. So again, this is just going to be a good second to last step before you introduce sodium hypochlorite for that last time. And then again, for that chlorhexidine for that second visit, we've got a product that's got some powerful wetting agents. It's going to improve the depth of penetration. It kills bacteria 10 times faster than the typical 2% chlorhexidine. So again, this is, you know, it's a different type of chlorhexidine. I would say this is probably mostly going to be used for endodontists. And so that second visit, this is a great product to use for that. We were talking about tips before. We've got the Canal Pro tips available in a 27 and a 30 gauge. We have slot-ended tips. I'm going to get an answer for you that as to why we would use these, but I think it's because there's a couple of irrigating solutions that aren't as detrimental to tissue as sodium hypochlorite. But I mean, I feel like this is what I'm talking about 99% of the time, these side ported tips. Again, 27 and a 30 gauge for these tips. And then we've got the Canal Pro Flexi tips. And so this is a patented tip that is going to easily track into canals. And again, it's not going to kink at that tip because of the flexibility of it and the material that it's made out of. And then we got the irrigating solution, the Canal Pro syringe station. This is something that I feel like every endo office should have 3 of these set up. You know, you can secure this to the wall. It looks clean, it's neat, it's got a low light indicator on it. Again, it's going to help prevent any sort of scrub damage, carpet damage by, you know, having this lower lock tip fit securely into the station, and you'll just withdraw the appropriate amount of solution required for that procedure. And then, yeah, it's a good, clean, safe way to continue to use the appropriate amount of product for each patient. I love this product, and I don't know, I feel like this is something we're going to focus on endodontists, and I think this is something that we should be proud to have one of these in each one of our endo offices. And you know what? It's like this would be a good product even to make deals with an endo office. You know, if you're doing a lunch and learn, and you know they're bought on with our files and apex locator points, then you know, this is something that if you throw one of these in there, or throw a couple of them in there, it's a great way to, you know, continue to get that residual business of the solutions that we've got into that office. So we'll talk more about that. Of course, under the Canal Pro line, we also offer these different colored syringes, and they will, you know, help increase the likelihood of a syringe swap, meaning having the color coding is going to make it easier to have a standard for, you know, which solution is in each one. So, you know, you could have bleach in red, EDTA in yellow, distilled water, and then chlorhexidine in blue. So they're latex-free, 10 cc's, and yeah, easy way to organize the office. Great product there. Again, this is another add-on that it's a great thing that we have. So I don't know how many of you have seen this presentation. I don't think this is on the G Drive, but there's some really good points in here as far as how to start the conversation with our irrigating solutions, and you know, provides a lot of really good questions and sort of scenarios on how to discuss our products with dentists and endodontists. So the accessory add-on line, it's another way of creating a Coltine office. Again, it's going to help the retail rep because, you know, most of the irrigating solutions are bought direct, or if it's Clorox, obviously they're buying that from the store and not going through their dealer rep. And again, it lays the groundwork for future sales of Coltine Endo products. You get a syringe station in an office, and you got them hooked on the solutions that go in that syringe station. So again, asking the doctor how they irrigate. It's a really good open-ended question. And if you just stop and listen to what they say, you can start, you know, figuring out how you can help them improve their steps for irrigating solution. So, you know, you can ask them, because I would say that a lot of dentists maybe question their technique for irrigation. And are they doing it the right way? Are they doing it for long enough? Should they be doing it, differently? Should they add active irrigation? So again, I think this is a great area for you to be an expert, a consultant, and to come in confident and say, look, I've got a simple way and simple solutions for you to, do irrigation in a effective way that's going to save you time, save you money. So again, the general dentists are, going to be more opt to doing it this way. Endodontists probably have a system that they're set and comfortable with, but if they don't have that syringe station in each operatory, that's an opportunity for us. So again, educate, validate with, statements that make the dentist think, and then again, mandate, make sure the doctor has a better way to do it, and make sure you have all the answers. So just for time's sake, I'm going to kind of run through all these scenarios briefly, but I'll send the presentation out to everybody so we can go over more of these in detail. But if the doctor is using Clorox, essentially this is discussing how dilution of that product by the office staff and how light affects it, and throughout a week of using a diluted version of store-bought Clorox, essentially by the end of that week, that solution is no longer what they wanted at that 5%. That 3% is probably not accurate either if they dilute it with water, and if it's not in a container that doesn't allow light in it. Again, it's just going to continue to lose its efficacy as more of that chlorine is leaves the solution. So again, anytime you do that, you're going to limit the effectiveness of killing bacteria, meaning it's going to have to stay in that canal for longer than a minute. And the more that comes out of solution, the longer you're going to have to sit that in the canal. So again, doc, are you sure that you're getting the full strength of sodium hypochlorite over the time that you purchased that store-bought bleach? And are you concerned about leaving any bacteria in unnecessarily? So again, I think that's a good question, conversation to have with the doctor in office when you're talking about chlorhexidine. So 2 times lower on surface tension with the sodium hypochlorite extra, and it's going to easily penetrate canals, lateral canals, 2 times more digestive than the regular 6% sodium hypochlorite. So again, it's going to dissolve tissue faster. Time is money. So again, this is a product that it's going to cost a little bit more, but it's going to cause less damage to the dentin, and it'll be in the you'll be able to dissolve tissue faster. This
I'm sorry.
Slide is just, yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead, Mary.
I was going to say something before, but you're on a nice roll. So Extra has been discontinued. I mean, it's hard to keep track of things that we discontinue over the years, but when it's your go-to, you remember it. So now we're just going to be talking about 6%. So just a tidbit.
I knew that. Son of a gun. You know what? I looked all over for that. I guess we had it last year, right?
I usually have the marketing bulletins in my iPad to refer to the date when it was, but I don't have that one. It's in my computer somewhere, and I didn't want to not be watching the presentation. So I don't know exactly when, but let's just not waste our time on the Extra anymore.
Agree. Moving on. EDTA. Thanks, Meredith.
Okay.
So we still offer 6%, which is great. And that's what everybody should be using just because of the digestive power of 6%. Again, that holds up against Clorox. So with EDTA, this is a product that everybody should have in their office if you're doing root canal therapy. And as we discussed, this is going to dissolve that smear layer, and it's also going to, again, some on-target questions. So the sodium hypochlorite does not remove the smear layer. So, doctor, what are you using to do that? And if they're not removing the smear layer, then again, they're going to have less efficacy for any of their obturation materials. So again, levels show that 8.5% pH of EDTA is going to have a better impact on removing that smear layer. Again, the syringe station is something that, you know, the more of these that you can have in offices, the more likely you're gonna be to have that irrigation solution resale for those bottles that go into the syringe station. All right, some of the competitors that are out there. I mentioned before earlier that Q-Mix 2-in-1 from Tulsa is I guess it's a pretty popular product. But what they're claiming is that this product will, it's a 2-in-1 sort of product that will remove the smear layer and also act as a antibacterial. So as far as the effectiveness of this product, it's ineffective as a chlorhexidine solution, but it's still just kind of important to know that you need to rinse with EDTA before you use chlorhexidine with this product. Another product that's out there is RC Prep. It's a lubrication product, and it's a formulation of glycol, peroxide, and EDTA. But again, there's, you know, as far as this product goes, we've got surfactants in our sodium hypochlorite and our EDTA that'll also act as lubricant. Then there's another competitive product out there called Smear Clear. It's water, EDTA, salts, and surfactants. And then as far as the cost goes, this is a product that is probably 4 times the price of EDTA. So you can attack this product with our EDTA solution on cost alone. And then as far as some evacuators, there's several products out there that you can use to remove solution or activate solution in the canal. These are a couple of those products. We used to make one, but that got discontinued. But again, it's just kind of good to know some of the products that are introduced out there, just to help introduce an irrigating solution to the canal and then also extract it. So as far as EDTA goes, the smear layer must be removed. Sodium hypochlorite does not remove the smear layer. And as far as the pH goes, 8.5% studies have shown that that's what's required in order to remove the smear layer and leave the dentin intact. And again, Canal Pro, syringe station, and the syringes are a great way to organize an office. Any questions about irrigation? Any thoughts, comments?
Hey, Pete. I have it from a credible source that the slotted ended tips have been around for much longer, and most doctors learn to use these at the universities, and that the close-ended, which we promote, have only been around for a little more than a decade and are more expensive to produce. So if the doctor knows not to stream the medicaments in a slow and uses a slow drip, which most do not, the slot ended is fine.
Good
Okay.
explanation. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Mr. Knackert, any thoughts or comments?
Just the one question that I had, I guess we didn't talk about, Meredith probably knows it, or anybody else. What would be the protocol for either a 3% or a 6% sodium hypochlorite? It's one or the other better, or do you, I guess that was one thing I was questioning.
Yeah,
So-
that is a good question. Meredith, do you want to answer that?
And sorry,
I mean,
Meredith, I don't necessarily want to put you on the spot. I just didn't know if you could answer that because, okay.
I mean, my simple answer is going to be, you know, the more percentage or the more potent that the product is, the quicker it's working, right?
Okay.
I mean, I don't know the reason why we would even have a 3% unless it's just, again, kind of more of a safety feature. But everybody kind of wants to work faster, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even bringing up the 3%. I would be bringing up the 6%, going through the incremental 2 milliliters or 1 milliliter at least 5 times for a total of this, you know, depending on what sequence we're even working in with and how many files we're going to introduce during the entire root canal. So, I mean, that's not really a good answer, but that's what I have.
Well, no, I think that's a good answer, but if you were going to use the 3%, would that necessarily mean that, you know, you're at 10 milliliters, would you have to double up on that because it's only 3%? So no, that's a good answer. I'm not going to bring it up anymore. I'll just bring up the 6%.
I think it's more just the time. Doubling up on the time, not necessarily the number, how long you're leaving it in the canal for.
I gotcha. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Meredith. Any other questions or comments?
So I have a couple comments. I mean, well done. That was a lot of slides. Thank you, guys. A couple of things that I wrote down. 35%. I'm not sure that we've ever seen that figure before, but 35% of the debris is left behind. So I think that number, throwing that out, it's kind of another aha moment. It's a good number to throw out to tell our story of why we need to add on some solutions at the end of our presentation. I liked your slide about lubricate, dissolve, wash, destroy, and then you clicked it and I didn't get that last one, but I like those words to go through during a presentation. Your quote was really nice. It does not matter what you put in the canal, it's what you take out. Awesome. I think that helps our Surgery Tip Endo story. What else do I have? Recommend irrigation regimen. Oh yeah, we talked about that. Keeping those 2 slides on your iPad. We often use the word smear layer to refer to EDTA and why we're doing that, but another term I liked, Denton mud. We've heard that before, but kind of just explain Denton mud is left behind. It's packed on the top, and we need to take a shot of EDTA, at least 1 milliliter of that, to remove that mud that's packed in there. And that's what I have. So thank you. Some terms to take away. Remove.
Awesome. Thank you, Meredith. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, sorry about the Canal Pro Extra. I'm recording this.
You don't have to apologize. I mean, we've all throughout the years seen so many things, and it's like, that's why I keep track of marketing bulletins, because wait, that was discontinued. When? How long ago?
Oh.
But you're not out there doing
Pete, that
this
was
every day
my
either, Pete. So you get a pass.
Pete, that was my fault.
No, hey Dan, you know, like I was looking at marketing bulletins from July. And it was in our price book
I know.
last year. Anyway. All right.
You
So
didn't get
again,
the
I'm
new
recording this. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. No, I didn't get the new price book yet. Oh, all right. Let's let's jump into drying. Okay. So step 8. Purpose of drying the canal is to remove all the irrigating solutions left in the canal. Why do you want to do that? Anytime there's solution remaining in the canal that has a potential to irrigate the surrounding tissue, and then it could also have a detrimental effect for the sealer or the obturation material. I'm going to show you Albor's video on drying without any sound, because I haven't figured that out yet. But this is, again, just to show you, there's a couple ways of doing it. You can use paper points or some kind of suction or some kind of alcohol, but as you can see, I mean, that Surgitip Endo is just something else. So let's jump back into the presentation here. We'll get into that in a second. So again, you can use a cotton pellet to remove any sort of solution within the pulp chamber. That's a good way to remove that excess solution that's in there. We also sell cotton pellets, so that's another product that you can present while doing a lunch and learn. Paper points, obviously. One quick tip for using less paper points, I heard that you can flip the point around so the fat end goes into the canal, and that'll absorb more liquid. So that might be a quick tip that you can leave. Obviously, you're not going to be able to get it the full working length, but you know, that's something that I was reading about. Alcohol also has a drying effect in that canal. And then suction, either a syringe where you can use these sort of lower lock tips to evacuate the solution manually with a syringe, or you can suck up some, connect something to your HVE and remove the solution that way. So paper points, again, after irrigating, canal is dried with paper points, ISO 02, 04, 06, and then we also have high flex CM, EDM paper points. Using the same size paper point as the last file size that you use is just a great way to remove all that moisture quickly. And it's just because you've got that identically matched paper point to fit in that canal. So again, it's just going to have better absorbency by using that. So we've recently changed our paper point product line. We've got some products that have been discontinued, and then we've changed the names on the products. I think I just sent you guys that email before this presentation, but the spreadsheet reviews the products that we've converted and the products that we've discontinued. So use that spreadsheet, and just moving forward, we've got new literature on paper points, got a purchase points, and everything that we've gotten rid of. But you know, we offer it in Stericells, and then we also offer it in these packs that, oh shoot, I can't even remember the name of that.
Drawer packs.
What we call that? What, say that again.
Drawer packs.
Okay. Thanks, Meredith. So again, paper points are sterile, highly absorbent. They do not contain any adhesive. So any sort of competitors that have an adhesive in their paper point to hold that together, that's going to reduce the efficacy of absorption, just because that glue, it's not going to absorb any material. So if there's any glue in a paper point, it's not going to help. So ours are highly absorbent, non-adhesive, variable lengths and sizes, firm yet flexible for easy insertion. And again, the top color tip is going to help prevent mixing up which size you're using. As far as suction goes, after irrigation, the canal can also be dried using suction from a syringe or HVE, high volume evacuator. This is going to save time, save money, reduce frustration of using multiple paper points. Of course, we've got the Royco SurgiTip Endo, specially designed for drying root canals. You've got the flexible part, which contains 3 different ball elements and an ISO tip of 60. So again, this has won some awards for innovation. This is going to increase the adhesion of filling material whenever you have that canal completely dry. So that's a good reason why you use it, why you use paper points as well. Again, it can easily be introduced in hard to reach canals. As you saw in that video, aspiration is highly effective at all angles, and visibility is not restricted with this product. Individually packaged, pre-sterile, ready to use. Again, you just connect it, the aspirating tip to the HVE, and then again, all these are going to be sterile. And here's a couple clinical pictures for you using this product. Handling instructions: introduce the tip vertically using slight tapping movements. Rinse with water if there's any clogging, and then the aspirating of the tissue or larger particles can be removed by irrigation and aspiration with the aid of the SurgiTip micro tip or SurgiTip. And then final drying with hygienic paper point. Again, you can't do all the drying with this. It's good to introduce paper points into the canal after you've used the SurgiTip Endo, just to ensure that all the drying, you've got that canal completely bone dry before you introduce any sort of sealer. Another tip about using paper points, how do you know when the canal is dry? I've heard a couple of things. If you remove a paper point and then you will rub it up against the rubber dam, you'll be able to see under lights and magnification if there's any sort of streak on the rubber dam from the solution that's still on that paper point. You'll know that you need to use more paper points. But if you don't leave any sort of residue or a streak on rubber dam that will sort of have a glare or like a light will reflect off of that, then you'll know that the canal is dry. So that's one tip that I was reading about paper points and how do you know when a canal is dry. But again, as far as the SurgiTip Endo, you've got the canal tip that should not be bent more than 90 degrees. But again, with all those, the 3 ball design, you'll be able to introduce that into the canal easily. And it's packaged with 20 tips in a box. And then you've got this adapter as well for the HVE. Here's a couple competitors. Again, we talked about the tips that you can attach to a syringe to remove any sort of solution. This is from Vista. You've got micro aspirators and then the endodontic aspirator. Ultradent makes some tips that you can use. This one's 0.36 millimeters, and they also have a 0.48 millimeter available in 20 or 50 packs. So you may run into some of these out in the field. And then there's a company called, I think, Kirkmed They offer Endo aspirator that you hook up to the HVE. Any questions about drying or paper points? Canal throat, syringe. Laurie, I feel like you do a good job of getting some samples of the SurgiTip Endo out to your customers. Have you had some success with that?
Yeah, people love them, and hot tip, you can get them on the literature site, so you don't have to use your grip for the SurgiTips, the samples, and it's a great leave behind. And they use them. I mean, sometimes, you know, I'll go back into an office and I'll see it on their desk still that they haven't even used it, but often they'll use it and say, wow, that was so cool, and they love it.
Oh, that's great. Perfect. That's a really, really great advice. Great tip there, Laurie. And then also on the website, being able to access that and send that to an office. Any other comments?
What are they sending, Laurie, from the website? Are they just sending a few of the packages with the adapter, without the adapter?
It's without the adapter, so it just comes as a little sample. It's just one SurgiTip, and it comes in like that cardboard which has all the instructions and everything on it, and just one sterilized tip. So no adapter, just the sample.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anybody
So,
ever explain the adapter? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Does anybody explain the adapter?
Yeah. Does anybody ever get into that conversation that that's also available when you purchase the 30 of them, or 25? I forget how many's in there. 25?
20.
20. Does anybody ever get into that? Because it's kind of a nice feature to throw out that it's available. Most are going to put it on the slow speed section, though. Anyone?
I don't think so. So Meredith, most people put it on slow speed, but the adapter will allow you to hook up to the HVE, which is the high volume evacuator. And is that something that you talk about?
No, I just throw it out there that the availability is there, because maybe that's something that they already do with a competitor product. So I just let them know that we have it as well. So, no, I mean, if they're switching to mine, it's not, you know, okay, well, now you have to use slow speed suction, but you were using the HVAC before. It's just a nice feature.
Yeah. I agree. No, that's a really good point. I mean, we put it in there, so why not talk about, you know, the benefits of having that and what you use it for? I mean, that's the thing. I feel like we have so many products that there's little things like that that we should know about and we should talk about. Just like with Parapost, right? You buy an intricate of Parapost and there's that little white plastic thing in there. You know, every intricate has that tiny sort of white translucent plastic handle in there. What is that used for? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Pearson, I know you know.
Oh.
Knackard, I know you know.
Yeah, you don't want to. Yeah.
What's that?
You don't really want to use it, do you? It's more of an emergency thing.
Yeah, well, actually, you know what? I've heard, you know, a couple different reasons as to why that's in there and what you would use it for. So
yeah, I can give you 2 or 3 reasons to use it, but
yeah,
when you got a rotary
it's something that.
Nice.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I mean, if you don't have the access opening and you have a patient that just can't open their jaw, I mean, it might be the only viable thing you have to go in with and get the job done to, provide yourself with an acceptance space for the post. And you could go back in with it to remove all the dental material, but I don't know that that's ever been a huge concern of end users over the past. But yeah, I mean, it kind of depends. More of an access opening thing to me, because if you needed it, you got one, and that's the best part about it.
I totally agree. Yeah, and sorry to get off on a tangent there, but it's just, Meredith, you brought up a really good point. We have that adapter, so bring it up, talk about it. It's it's part of the refill that we sell, so make sure that you're bringing up the advantages of why we put that in there, because just anything like that, all you need is just to turn on one light in somebody's head, and it's another reason to move over to that product. So, okay.
On that subject, real quick. Go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead, Meredith. And yeah.
I was just going to say, if we're on the subject of why is it in there, the little silver tube in the handpiece and the endo handpiece, what's that little silver tube for? It's to put on the end when we lubricate so that the lubricant doesn't get all over the place. Took me like a couple years to start talking about that. It's like, what's that piece for? Okay, keep going.
I was going to ask, what significant difference is there between connecting it to their high volume versus just the regular, low volume?
What's the difference is?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a small tip. Does it make much difference if they use it or not?
Probably not, but we also have, where's my iPad? The other aspirators. Hold on one second. Please hold.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be like using a Dust Devil hand vac versus a shop vac, right? I mean, you'll be able to clean out the canal with your low volume evacuator, but if you hook it up to that high volume and you've got that tip, you'll just have more sucking power, and you'll be able to get all the solution out of all the isthmus eye and the cul-de-sacs. So, yeah.
Also, those if you look at that's SurgiTip Endo, right? Both SurgiTip Micro, SurgiTip, those are different opening sizes. So, maybe that just comes in handy for those instead. But yeah, I don't have a good explanation. I think Pete just nailed it.
All right, good questions though.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. All right, moving on to the last part, medicamentation. So the goal of this is to eliminate any residual microorganisms in the canal. I'm going to show the last Albor's video on this, just to kind of give you a look at a canal that's had some residual sort of bacteria or excess sort of bleeding or pus in the canal, and why you would need this step. So I think that pretty much answers why you would need a second visit and medicamentation. So here's the introduction of a product through Micromega that Amy said will launch next year, and it's a calcium hydroxide paste that, again, you can just introduce into the canal, and it'll use as an anti-inflammatory, antibacterial, antiviral. Leave it in there for a couple of weeks, help stop the bleeding and the pus from draining into the canal. So again, it's going to help allow for a sterile, clean canal for obturation. So again, calcium hydroxide for disinfection, 2-visit treatment when the canal has been infected, kills bacteria by raising and maintaining the pH level above 12, and it can remain in the canal for 3 to 5 days. These calcium hydroxide points that we used to sell were moisture activated, but again, what's calcium hydroxide used for? Over the last 50 years, it's used for raising the pH to act as a antiseptic, and it's going to kill bacteria in the root. Some permanent versions of that, cavity liners, Dical, Life from Kerr, repairs perforations and fractures, and Apex affix, I can't say that word. As far as temporary filling material, that's what paste is, and that's what our calcium hydroxide points used to be. Temporary indications for cavities and root canals, and then just provisional bacteria treatments averaging 1 to 3 weeks, depending on the clinical situation. So again, it's used as a temporary material to kill bacteria in the canal, and then when time's not available, to complete the root canal filling. So if you've been, if it's taken you a really long time to, find all the canals, instrument, irrigate, and, let's say that patient was scheduled for an hour, but this is running into a 3-hour root canal therapy. You can use calcium hydroxide to place in the canal, use temporary filling material like Cabot or Duotemp or Coltisol F, and then bring that patient back. Remove the calcium hydroxide and finish cleaning the canal and using probably chlorhexidine, sodium hypochlorite, and then obturating that canal. It's also available in a powder where you mix with water into a slurry and introduce into the canal. Again, that's it's pretty laborious to do that. They have the pre-mixed paste. Again, here are some of the competitors, UltraCal, and then we'll introduce next year. Here's a couple of the brochures for that. And then this is the information on calcium hydroxide paste. It's a calcium hydroxide and a barium sulfite. Again, it's going to have an antiseptic sort of effect that's going to allow for easy obturation and sealer after that canal has been cleaned. But again, it's a temporary obturation between sessions, and that'll help in the case of any sort of canal fracture as well. Water soluble for easy cleanup. Barium sulfite is going to help increase the radiopacity of it. It's got an easy syringe application, flexible needle to access the canals, and single-use tips will prevent cross-contamination. And that's it for step 9, medicamentation. Any questions or comments about that?